Good afternoon, everyone. Are we changing the slides? Thank you very much. Okay, so onto the industrial sector. I'll give you sort of 10 minutes or so. So having a... Oh, where we go? There we are. Quick economic overview, see where we are. So I think Thai economy has experienced modest growth last year. It's quite impressive considering really we were looking at minus 6.2% GDP growth back during the pandemic. So we are coming back relatively strongly. I mean, it's fallen short of previous forecasts due to a decline in exports and government expenditure. But despite these setbacks, private consumption and tourism have been the primary drivers of this recovery. And with the full reopening of the country in the second half of last year, we see the influx of international investors and are coming back to the country, and we're seeing an increase in domestic consumption. So looking into the industrial sector, this is primarily foreign investors and local manufacturers coming in to purchase industrial estate land. We are seeing a fairly steady sort of growth. The market on the whole has been sort of gradually rising. We've seen sort of steady growth, about 80% sort of cumulative sales rate, and that's continued to improve. If you look at the key sort of indicators, if it will stay with us, increased by about 3,000 Rai, or about 26% from the year before. So we're seeing a strong influx of demand coming from overseas. Last year, primarily the Chinese were the biggest players coming back into the market, investing in areas like batteries and electric vehicles. We can make this available later. So actually, the amount of land we sold last year or was sold in Thailand was a 5-year high. So actually quite impressive growth. And the vast majority of that was in the Eastern Economic Corridor. So investment privileges, overall, the amount of incentives which have been given away by Thailand actually increased by about 39% from the previous year. And it was, again, this is primarily sort of the electronics, electric vehicles, and even data centers. Where is all this supply? Where are most of the industrial states? By far and away, it's in the Eastern Economic Corridor. Over 107,000 Rai on the Eastern Seaboard today, which is available for sale to foreign investors, with a mix. The next largest area just to the north of Bangkok, in that central area around Ayutthaya, Rajana, those types of locations, Wang Noi. So looking at where we can see here on the total sales activity over the years, we can see we're actually even selling more land today than we were prior to the COVID-19, with over 4,000 Rai sold last year. There's quite an impressive uptick in activity. Again, vast majority of that, over 63% of that, in the Eastern Economic Corridor. Gives you an idea of the areas where most popular. It's pretty broad, but overall cumulative sales rate rose by about 0.7% year on year. So going to prices have been relatively stable, a slight uptick. Most expensive land, of course, is in and around by Bangkok. And then the most popular area, again, no big surprise, on the Eastern Economic Corridor. Overall sales prices are, again, so overall trends are key things to look at on the industrial and manufacturing sector. Principal sustainability. Companies are increasingly concerned about their carbon footprint and their impact on the environment and on the world. So this is being driven by regulatory measures, not just here in Thailand, but around the world, which is forcing this shift towards green manufacturing. Industry 4.0, we're seeing increased automation, and we're seeing rapid sort of digitalization in the country as companies are adapting artificial intelligence and robotics to increase efficiency in the manufacturing side. When I talk about digitalization, we're not just sort of merely talking about things like social media. What we're talking about here is, for example, creating digital twins of factories before they have even opened. Just last year, BMW actually announced that they had recreated a factory entirely in virtual reality before they actually built the main facility. That was so this is the way things are moving with things like digital twin simulations. and additive manufacturing, which is a fancy word for 3D printing. So, onto warehouses. A continued steady growth in supply and demand, hovering around sort of 85-86% occupancy levels. Look at what's going on here. It increased about 8.8% in total supply over the year last year, going up to 5.3 million square meters, of which almost 4.6 million is currently occupied. So seeing 86% occupancy rates, with rents staying steady at about 159 baht per square meter per month. So where is all the logistics supply? Primarily in and around Bangkok. So about sort of 48 or almost half of the major distribution centres being located within sort of a 20 to 30 kilometre distance of Bangkok. Then onto the eastern seaboard, and then primarily up to the north in areas like Wang Noi and Ayutthaya. So the occupancy rates soon reached an average of 90% overall in Bangkok, about 86% across the overall market. Sorry? Okay, we all good to go? So demand then, and what's driving it. So we are seeing continued growth in this sector, driven primarily by e-commerce. As the e-commerce sector has been growing so very strong over the last several years, they're using increasingly more warehouse space. Why? Well, they don't have shops. So they tend to use about 3 times as much warehousing space compared to a more traditional brick and mortar retailer. And as the sector grows, we're seeing lots of new demand. There are also companies which are sort of investing in modernizing their supply chain, which invariably is meaning larger warehouses as they move out and consolidate out of older, smaller properties around the country, locating in more strategic locations. And then manufacturing sector. Of course, as we are attracting more manufacturers coming into the country, this is also leading to an increase in demand for warehousing. So overall, asking prices have remained fairly stable for the last 5 years, hovering around sort of 150 to 160 baht per square meter, a fairly stable market. But there's a large difference in spread in the sorts of properties which are available, with rents can be as low as 100 baht per square meter, going over to 200 baht per square meter, depending upon the location. So what's happening here in Thailand with respect to sort of some key trends to sort of take away from this presentation? This is primarily a built-to-suit market. Developers are no longer building speculative warehouses, or very few. The vast majority of it, they're catering to demand, as and when that company is needing a new warehouse, they will build something especially for them. This keeps our occupancy levels very stable. Again, this is primarily being driven by the third-party logistics providers and fast-moving consumer goods. This is where most of the demand for the warehousing space is coming from. And we're seeing more and more players enter the market. So we are seeing more instances of companies that are known for example, condominium development, entering into the logistics market. We see that with joint ventures being announced. Most recently, we saw Pruksa actually invest in a joint venture with a Taiwanese group called Allied Logistics Property and Capital Land as they go to enter the logistics market later this year. And overall, trends, very much the same as what we're seeing in logistics, is a tale of digitalization and ESG. Companies are increasingly adopting smart warehouse technologies, or robotics and automation inside warehouses, and a growing importance for ESG as companies look to adopt things like double skin facades, solar panels and natural ventilation. And that's about 10 minutes or so on industrial.